We are going to get started. A few things up front. Well, first of all, this is like one of 2 days in the entire year that I wear a tie. I don't normally wear a tie for my presentations, but today, as Dennis mentioned earlier, is Hunger Action Day. It's part of the East Texas Food Bank's Hunger Action Month, where our staff wears orange. I couldn't find my orange t-shirt. The only thing I have really that's orange is this tie. It's the one day, it's 2 days a year I wear a tie. On Hunger Action Day, and then I have a Grinch tie I wear at Christmas, but that's it. So anyway, in case you're wondering, what is this guy doing? Nobody else is wearing a tie. Maybe I should have worn one. Nah, you're good. Okay, so let's get into a few things from the start. First, a couple of disclaimers. After a year and a half plus in doing the virtual thing, it's still not my favorite. It's necessary, but still learning how to navigate through this, probably like most of you. So if you're having some issues today, it's no big deal. You're not the only one. I am too. Hopefully mine won't drop out again during the middle of the presentation. So disclaimer number 2, like I said, we are going to cover a lot of ground in a short amount of time. Don't feel like you have to write everything down or absorb everything that's being said. Look for, I would say, 2 to 3 things that you think would be immediately helpful that you can take and have a conversation with other people in your agency about, or that you can just sit on your own back porch and ponder about. Just a couple of things that you would think would be helpful, write those down. If you can go away from today thinking, I don't remember almost anything this guy said, but I got these 2 or 3 things that we can put into practice at our agency tomorrow. Well, tomorrow is Saturday, so I don't know, maybe not tomorrow or Monday or sometime in the very near future. Do that, because then it'll be a win. So many times in any kind of session, when I go to a conference, I write down pages and pages of notes that end up just sitting in a shelf somewhere, not being used and not being referenced. If you can get a couple of things, run with that. Okay, so already mentioned about the chat. Be sure to post any questions or comments that you have. I may throw out a couple of discussion questions as we go throughout. So here's our overall agenda for the day. We are going to start out by discussing 2 big areas of fundraising: solicitation and stewardship. So the 2 big S's of fundraising that go across the board in pretty much any avenue of fundraising, whether you're working with individuals, whether you're raising money from companies or local businesses, if you're doing grant applications to foundations or to community organizations, you're going to at some level deal with the solicitation, and not just that, but stewardship. And stewardship is often where things get dropped off. So we're really going to hone in and focus in on that. So after that, we are going to do an incredibly brief crash course in grant proposals. Now, of course, it's not exhaustive. I've condensed it into a few minutes, but we're going to look just at high level at a few things that you're up against when opening or trying to complete a grant proposal or application, and then also look at some tips for effective grant writing so that you can help to hone your craft, as it were. And then finally, along with that will be some helpful supporting documents that you'll want to have in the queue, kind of and ready to draw from at any point in the fundraising journey. So I'm going to offer some suggested fundraising resources. I have a few, particularly podcasts, that have been extremely helpful for me, that I have tons of good ideas. So I'm going to share that. And then speaking of resources, I imagine in this room, there is a ton of knowledge and experience about fundraising. Probably some of you have been raising money longer than I have been. And I've been at the food bank here for 11 years. That's kind of been my career in fundraising. So you probably have a lot of experience. As often as you have the opportunity, if you're not already doing this, to touch base with other people, with other agencies, other food pantries, to ask and to find out what are they doing? What are some creative things that they're doing, especially during life with COVID? What are some creative ways that you are reaching out to donors and fundraising and all that? So there's a lot of knowledge in this room. If we can put our heads together, we can figure some stuff out. So yeah. Okay, so like I said, my name is Jonathan Benedetti. I'm the development director at the East Texas Food Bank. I have been here for about 11 years. It was 11 years in June. I started off as the grant writer. I did not have any prior experience in grant writing, didn't really have any prior experience in fundraising. Well, actually, that's not true. Many years ago, I went door to door with a box or maybe a sign-up sheet of chocolate bars to all the neighbors and family that I went around and asked for them to people to buy candy. I don't know how many I sold. Well, I sold a lot. I don't know what percentage was my dad buying them and what percentage is the rest of everyone buying them. But that was my first foray into fundraising. Now my job, unlike what I would have ever thought my career trajectory would take, is in the world of development and fundraising. So there are some certain stereotypes and some certain things that automatically pop into your mind when you think about fundraising. Sort of like when you hear the phrase car salesman, or when you hear the word lawyer. Now, for any lawyers or car salesmen in the room, I'm not making any judgment about you. I'm sure you were one of the good ones. But there are certain associations we make with ideas, with words, with jobs, and sometimes fundraising is looked at as a bad word. It's looked at as something that's, or at very least, a necessary evil because, and I'll open this up to the chat, does anyone in this room actually really, really like asking people for money? If you like asking people for money, why don't you just throw your name in there or say, me, I do, or throw up a little hand or something. I'm curious because there are a few people out there who really enjoy asking for money. As it turns out, all of my kids are those people, but that's a little different. So I'm not seeing any responses. If you're like me, the thought of asking people for money, sometimes as an introvert, the thought of talking to people is a little nerve-wracking for me. Certainly with asking people for money. Money is a personal thing. Your finances, your budget, it's not really something you like to bring up. But for a nonprofit organization that depends on donations to exist, it is absolutely essential and necessary. So it's not whether or not you're going to ask people for money, it's how are you going to do it, and how well are you going to do it, and how effective are you going to be? So I titled this session, It's Not Just About the Money, because I wanted that, if anything got left with you, I wanted it to be that fundraising is not just about numbers and budgets and spreadsheets and checks or credit cards. Fundraising is about building relationships with people. Ultimately, the work of development, the work of fundraising, of course, if we don't end up with some money in the end, we're not exactly doing our job. But fundamentally, this work, like so much of the other work that we do in the nonprofit world, is about building quality relationships with people and partnerships of joining together to do things that we could not do by ourselves, that no one person or organization could do. But when we come together, we can accomplish a lot more. So anyway, we don't like asking for money. We avoid it for a lot of reasons. It's awkward. Maybe we've seen, and I can certainly attest to this, most of my experiences in fundraising, candy bars aside, before I worked for the food bank, I saw some pretty bad examples of fundraising, some manipulative examples, some over-promising, some dishonesty, some unethical behavior that kind of soured me for fundraising. I can thankfully say that with the food bank, I will talk to absolutely anybody about the East Texas Food Bank. I love the food bank. I love our mission. I love the work that we're doing together. I hope you feel that way about your organization too. I'm sure you do. It's a little easier to ask for money when you really believe in the work that you're doing. But at any rate, it becomes hard, and you can kind of, like for me, I'm not a very direct person, period. So I can kind of beat around the bush, and maybe just if I'm asking somebody for money, it's like, well, you might think about helping us with this if you feel like it, but you probably don't. So never mind, I'll see you later, and kind of talk your way out of it before even beginning. It's understandable. You can get better at it. Or like I said, maybe you're just an introvert and you don't like talking to people in general. You love emails. If anyone else besides me really love it when you call someone and the voicemail picks up and you're like, oh, thank God. I get to leave a voicemail. And then I actually start leaving a voicemail and I'm like, oh no, I don't know how to leave voicemails. I forgot how to talk. But anyway, so just a couple of reasons why we maybe avoid fundraising. There are some guiding principles that we will cover that we are going to dive into today as we talk about why it's not just about asking for money. So there are two big words, which I've mentioned both of them already. The first is relationship. It doesn't matter whether you are raising money from an individual, from a community group, from a club, from a local business, from a national corporation, from a charitable foundation, from a major donor, a very wealthy individual, or from someone who has limited resources. There is always a person there. Even the biggest organization, you might say it this way, there's a person signing the check. It's not just a nameless, faceless void, a nameless, faceless dollar sign or a check. There is a person there. So fundraising fundamentally is about building relationships. Well, it's also about partnership because, fundraising, like nonprofit work, it's not just about what we want to do. But when you're working with donors, you really want to ask yourself and frankly, ask them, what do they want to accomplish? Because think about yourself. Think about the organizations that you give to. Why do you give to them? And that's not just money. That could be money. That could be volunteering. That can be the agency that you're here representing today, that you're either on staff for or that you're volunteering with. Why do you do that? And by extension, why do you think that the people who give to your organization give to that or give to your organization? Now, it may be that they have a relationship with someone there, maybe with you, and they trust you and they're on board. Some fundraising is like that, where you say, hey, I need your help here. But oftentimes it's because the work that you do connects with the deep passion that they have to serve the community or to make a difference in the world, to make the world a better place. And so when they come to the table with the funds that they want to give to you, whether it's $5 or $5,000 or $50,000, it is not just a check. It is the way in which these individuals want to love, serve, and help. It's a reflection of their passion and their commitment. And so the partnership that you form is a lot deeper than asking for money. It's about saying, what can we accomplish together? And so by extension, sometimes we're so locked in to meeting the needs that we have in our organizations, which are very real. We constantly have needs, and the budget doesn't always balance every month. But that's why it can be easy to forget, but it's so important to remember that we want to help donors accomplish their vision and their goals for making a difference in the world as well. And that's a quality partnership. So you might say it this way: fundraising is the context. Now, kind of borrowing a quote from, sort of riffing on a quote from the author Frederick Buechner here. Fundraising is the context where people's deepest passions can be connected with the world's greatest needs. So with that in mind, let's talk a little about the solicitation itself. Let's open up to the chat real quick. Just throw out some brainstorm. What are some different sources or channels of funding? What are some different places, not actual names of donors or companies, although you could throw that out if you want to, but just what are some different channels of fundraising or that your organization gets money from? There's big categories. Throw some in the chat. Because I got a list, but it'd be interesting to hear what y'all would contribute to that. Golf tournament. Okay, so a golf tournament, and by extension, any other kind of special fundraising events. Okay. What else? We're talking about money. Where might that money come from? Okay, well, obviously everyone is in deep thought, so we'll just go with that. I'll list a few, and think about how this list might match or reflect your organization's donors. So first of all, just corporate giving in general. And that could be local businesses, national corporations. It could be cause marketing from in-store campaigns like Walmart when they do the Fight Hunger, Spark Change campaign, or Kroger or other grocery stores or anywhere. So that's cause marketing. Employee payroll deduction is another way that businesses can give back. They give their employees an opportunity to give. Matching gifts. Some organizations make matching gifts available when their employees donate to an organization. So that's some ways, and this can also include engagement at multiple levels. It could be donating money, but it could also be volunteering, groups coming from a local business or a national business to volunteer, or food drives, collecting food. These are different ways that corporations get involved. So another is churches and faith-based communities. I bet you in this room, a significant amount of the support that a lot of us get is from churches. Maybe your agency actually was birthed out of, or is still firmly fixed within a church. Maybe it's your church's food pantry and you get a line item on the budget. Or maybe you go and do presentations to different churches with the opportunity to get to request donations. Now, a little pro tip here, if you can make a presentation to a church and they take up an offering, that's cool and that's great. The better thing that you can do is try to get as many names and addresses, if you can, or email addresses at very least, as possible. So you're not just getting a single contribution from the church, but so that you're actually able to connect with all of the people that are within that congregation. Now, hopefully you can do both, but don't forget the individuals that are in these faith communities or in these churches as you're seeking to raise funds from churches. So churches and faith-based communities as number two. Number three, this one's obvious, just individuals. Funding could come in through mailings. Maybe it's an in-house mailing that you send out, a newsletter, an emergency appeal. We did some of that after COVID hit. Or maybe you work with a direct mail company that helps you put together regular, monthly, or quarterly appeals and newsletters. We work with a company that helps us to do that. Not everyone has the ability or the resources to do that, but it's a great way. It's a great way to solicit funding. So another from individuals, but also from companies and organizations, is online fundraising. If you have an online presence through your website, social media with links and always opportunities to connect, that's a good way. It's a good channel for money to come in. And then another, not finally, but at least finally on this list, way that individuals give is by becoming recurring monthly donors. And I really want to highlight this. I know that some of, having been through the Agency Institute, ETFP Agency Institute with a number of you, I know that a lot of you have monthly giving programs. If you don't, it is a great way to get people engaged. Looking at just industry standards and fundraising data, the average monthly donor is going to give more over the course of their lifetime to an organization than someone who's not a monthly donor. So you would want to get those big one-time gifts, but you also want to move as many people as you can into a pool of monthly donors. Create a monthly giving program. Put a name on it, put a label. Our monthly giving program is called The Table. How fitting, because hunger relief, right? So we call it The Table, and we make it a possibility for people to make recurring credit card donations or to make direct deposit through their bank account. So you probably thought of all that before, but just in case, if you haven't given much thought to that, think about how you might build up a list of monthly donors for your organization. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so a couple other channels or sources of funding to consider for grant funders, and we'll talk a little bit about grants before we're done here. So I'll just say grant funders. And just on a side, a lot of times I think that people think about grants as this like pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, or this magic fix-all, like if we can just get a grant, that will solve all of our problems. And getting a good sized grant will definitely, all money that you can bring in certainly helps. But when thinking about grants, like when thinking about any of these channels of fundraising, whether that's your annual golf tournament, any of these things, basically what I'm saying is don't put all your eggs in one basket. Have multiple channels or multiple opportunities for people to give. Because we're struggling with that this year because our annual golf tournament got canceled last year due to COVID. And again, this year, we've canceled out of concern for the rising number of COVID cases, and particularly the Delta variant. We've opted to postpone our fundraising events. And so if we were counting on that event to bring in all the money in a given year, we would be in serious trouble. So diversify the channels that you solicit funds through. So speaking engagements, again, those may be a little bit less regular right now, but as you have the opportunity to safely do this, talk to people, talk to groups of people. Yeah, special events, we already talked about that. And finally, board giving. I know that with your board of directors, and I know that different of our organizations have different size boards and different people. Maybe your board is the same people that do everything else for your organization, or maybe not, but just don't leave out your board members as a potential source of funding for your organization. Or just to look at them like, oh, well, they're our board, they're supposed to do X, Y, Z. Really take the opportunity to cultivate relationships with those board members as well, and look at them as donors and how you can help them fulfill their own philanthropic goals. So those are just a few channels. Here next, several principles for effective solicitations. First of all, know your target audience. Different potential donors require different approaches. Now, if you're talking to an individual, you're probably going to play up the stories of the people that you serve, tug on the heartstrings, as it were. And there should always be a little heartstring tugging, no matter what kind, because we can't get away from the mission. We can talk about numbers and pounds and meals, but fundamentally, our work is helping individual people and families. So never leave that out of any fundraising that you do. But if you're having a conversation with a person, you're probably going to spend a little bit more time, because the person that you'll be talking to may be more interested in the stories of our neighbors who struggle with hunger. If it's a corporation, they're certainly going to be interested in that, but they're also interested as a corporation in how in their own marketing in the community, their image in the community, that they are a business who gives back to the community. So that's going to affect your approach. If you're talking about a foundation, a grant funder, now there are all different kinds of foundations, but oftentimes if you're submitting a grant proposal, fundamentally what you're wanting to do is demonstrate and show that you are a good investment of their limited resources. They have X number of dollars that they give out charitably each year, and you want to show, not just tug the heartstrings, but show that you are a worthwhile investment, that you know what you're doing and that you're good at doing it. So know your target audience. Second, research. If it's no matter whether it's a corporation or a foundation or an individual, if you have an opportunity to just do some good old Google searching and through other avenues, what does this donor give to? How much do they give? Get an idea before you just you go in and cast your fundraising request bread on the water and hoping it comes back to you. Do the due diligence and the research before making a request or a solicitation. Next, think of ways that you can make a donation or the impact of a donation tangible or quantitative. Now, you can't put everything in numbers, but sometimes you can. So for example, some of you may already do this. You can say, X number of dollars will provide food to this many families, or will provide boxes of food to this many seniors, or will serve this many kids through the backpack program, or will help this many people get into this, whatever program that you use or that you implement. So make the impact tangible. This is especially true with individuals, and with your monthly donors. I mean, that's a great opportunity to say, hey, for $10 a month, here's what you can do to make a difference. We've all seen the commercials, and that's another little side note. Don't just make the commercials if you're doing a commercial, but even the pitches, don't make it all like completely sad and depressing. Make it hopeful. Make it look like, you want to tug the heartstrings, but you also want to show, hey, we are doing good and effective work. So yeah. All right, a little sidebar on specifically asking for funding from corporations. A few things to remember. One, explain to the company. Maybe this isn't a meeting that you get. Maybe you get to go talk to a site manager, or a CEO, or a group of employees. Explain how your organization aligns with that company's priorities and values, which of course means you have to know that company's priorities and values. Once again, do your research, but explain how your organization aligns with them. And if it's not a good fit, it might not be worth your time. Now, we want to ask everybody we can for money, but focus especially on those with which your organization's values align with their values, and explain to them how. Second, be clear on the value proposition for the company. This sounds kind of crass, but what do they get out of it? It's not just about you give me money, but what am I providing to you? A true partnership is not just a one-way street. There is give and take. We benefit and we also give. They give and they also benefit. So that might be what they hope for in publicity, in helping to get the word out, in working with their employees. I don't know. It's going to be different depending on who it is, but ask some questions and be clear when you make a presentation or a proposal or an application on what that value add is for them. So, okay, third, this is kind of in line with that. Make sure that any funding proposals or presentations are company-centered and not just charity-centered. Make sure that everything you're saying is not just about your organization. Here's who we are, here's what we do, here's how we do it, but also talking about the company. Look, we see this is what you're doing in the community. We know you want to make a difference, and this is how we can partner together to impact the people that we both serve. So keep that in mind. Because you know how it is. If you're in a conversation with somebody and they only ever talk about themselves, that's not really much of a conversation. Okay, build relationships with, number 4, build relationships with multiple contacts at that company, because those corporate contacts often change. So you want to make sure you have the most current, up-to-date list or name of the person that you should be contacting or working with. Sometimes it's just, you make a phone call and say, hey, who do I need to talk to about your community giving program or about your, just public awareness or whatever it is. So build relationships with a lot of people so you have different contacts. And excuse me, last one on this list, have some collateral. And this is where you're going to have to put in some work and maybe invest a little bit of money so that you can have some, if you're meeting with people in person or with companies in person, maybe it's newsletters, maybe it's brochures about your agency and your program, maybe it's an annual report, a fact sheet, or whatever. Maybe it's any or some combination of these in a nice little folder that you can leave behind every time you talk to somebody, so that they have something to remember and something that helps your organization to stand out. And if you're not meeting in person, have this is good best practice too. Have digital versions of all of these documents so that you can attach them to grant applications and et cetera, et cetera. So this is a good practice no matter who you're working with. And I'm looking at the time. We gotta speed this thing up. Okay, so that's in a nutshell some ideas about solicitation. Hopefully there have been 2 or 3 things that can be helpful for you that you can put into practice immediately. So after solicitation, the other big S is stewardship. Because remember, you're not just asking for money, but you're building a relationship and inviting people or businesses or organizations into a partnership with you. Now, in this stewardship of donors who have given to your organization, they have shown you that they are invested, at least at some level. They have showed you that they're in. Maybe they volunteered, maybe they gave a donation, but either way, they're saying, okay, we support what you're doing. Focus your time on cultivating and building relationships with them. As a nonprofit organization that depends on donations for survival, donors are actually a part of your mission. We don't often think of donors as a part of our mission. We think of the families that we serve and that is our primary mission, or the agencies that we serve or partner with. We don't always think of donors as part of our mission, but if we're getting involved in fundraising, we are not just serving our neighbors who are struggling with hunger and poverty. We are serving our donors. We are loving our donors, like I said, by connecting their passions with the needs of our community. Of course, that doesn't mean that you should make all your organizational decisions based on what you think donors will or won't like and walk around on eggshells. But it does mean that you regularly think about loving and serving your donors and helping them to achieve their mission and passion to serve the community and to make the world a better place. Okay, another principle for stewardship is this. In the words of the philosopher and fundraising guru, Stephen Stills, love the one you're with. Let me explain. We spend, as nonprofits, and it's across the board, we spend a lot of time and effort and energy and resources trying to find new donors. And we have to. That is an absolutely necessary component of our work. We have to find new donors. We have to bring more people into our mission. We have to grow our operations and our distribution and our fundraising. So we have to find new donors. But most often, as a fundraiser, the most effective work that we can do with the highest return on investment is to cultivate relationships with people who have already given to our organization, not to spend an inordinate amount of time or most of our time hunting for new donors, but spend a lot of our time building connections with the people who have given to us already. So how do you build a relationship with donors? I'm sure there is a lot, again, there's a lot of wisdom in this room and things that have worked for you and such. So hopefully we can find opportunity to share that with each other. But just a couple ideas from here. Like any relationship, you got to get to know them. If you only talk or care about yourself, that is a dysfunctional relationship. Don't just talk about your food pantry or your organization or the food bank. I love talking about the food bank. I got to stop and dial it in. When I do a tour of the food bank, I'm like, yeah, the food bank's awesome. And we do this, we do that, and we do. And sometimes I forget to take the time and stop and ask about this person. What interests them? So first, who are they? What really makes them excited? What gets them up and ready to go in the morning? Why did they give to us in the first place? What caught their attention about our organization or our mission? What did they care about? And really listen, kind of how we all do, where we just, we're sort of half listening, waiting for our turn to talk. It can be that way with donors and even donor, funding proposals, where we already know what we want to ask them for. We know what we want to pitch to them. And then we just pretend to listen. Really, really listen to what their interests and their passions are. This is true not only of individuals, but also of corporations or foundations. Because remember, there's always a person behind the check. Sometimes it's easier with a foundation or a business because on their website, they'll have a stated list of what they give to and why they give and all of that. So you may have to dig or fish a little bit, mixing metaphors, with some companies or with individuals, but it's worth the time. It is a long game. You may have, and actually should have, meetings with donors where you don't even bring up the subject of asking them for another gift. That time will come. But if you have never done this, then you should set up a time or try to set up meetings, phone calls, maybe just emails, where you have the opportunity to interact with your donors, to get to know them and to answer questions, to ask questions before you even get into the soliciting of funding. So not all donors will want to build this kind of a relationship, may have to do a little define the relationship here, but it's okay. If not everybody wants to come do a tour or talk to you on the phone, that's all right. You meet people where they're at, and I guarantee you there will absolutely be some. And I think that you will be surprised to see the extent to which donors want to get more involved and engaged. And then at the end of the day, want to invest more funding and resources. Also in conjunction with that, start small. In a perfect world, we could cater and personalize all of our donor communication with every single donor, but that's just not realistic. So start small if need be. Pick a couple of your most valuable donors and spend time building and stewarding that relationship. You probably know off the top of your head at least a couple of who your most important or most valuable donors are. And how you define that really is up to you. Maybe that's their capacity. Maybe it's the amount they've already given to you. Maybe it's just that you have a relationship with them or a mutual relationship. You can think of some offhand who are your most, I say most valued as if you value all your supporters, but those that you would think, I need to spend time with this person and cultivate this relationship to help deepen the partnership and help our organization grow. So yeah, pick that and spend time on those. You don't have time to do that with everyone. So really make it count. So be sure to manage the data that you get from your donors. Ask yourself a few questions. Do you know who your donors are and where your donations are coming from? How are you tracking donations? How are you storing donor information? Have a good donor database. Some of them are really expensive. Some of them are not. Some of them are pretty simple, but find a way to store and be able to track and evaluate not just the money that comes through, but the information for your donors, and get as much info as you can. Address, email, phone number, what they like to eat for breakfast. I mean, whatever the information that you get, if you're having a meeting and you hear something, write that down. What's going on with their family? Because you want to be able to, I mean, sometimes it's hard to juggle all that information. Keep that stored somewhere so that you can reference it when you go back and pull up that record, that you can know, oh yeah, that helps jog the memory of this person as you interact with them. So next on stewardship, and this is a no-brainer, although perhaps not as much of a no-brainer as you might think, say thank you. If the only time you pop up is when you're going to ask for more money, that's a problem. Send out thank you letters and send them out as soon as possible. Don't wait a month. It may seem like a good thing. And I talked to someone at an organization recently who they only send out thank you letters once a month because they wait until they've got enough to send out a bulk mailing so you can get a discounted postage rate, which, I mean, on paper, that makes sense. You can save some money. But if you're talking about effective stewardship, you are going to want to get those thank you letters out as soon as possible. So if you're not doing that, put that at the top of your list. Maybe that's a formal letter. Maybe it's a thank you note, personalized thank you note. Just get them out and try to get them out within like 48 hours of when you get the donation, if at all possible. It is time well spent and worth doing. Handwritten thank you notes are really good to send. Thank you calls. Make a thank you call from someone on your staff, from your executive director or someone on your board or volunteers or whatever. Just make some thank you calls. Let people know. And they may not answer because a lot of us don't answer numbers we don't recognize, but maybe they will. And then maybe you can leave a voicemail so they'll know you're thinking about it. Don't use that thank you as an opportunity to ask for more money. Be sensitive about that. Make sure that your thank you is actually a thank you and not just a pretext for an additional solicitation. And after the gift, stay in touch. Send out newsletters, email updates, videos, just little videos maybe that you take, assuming that you maintain the privacy of your clients and and all that. But just take a little video, from one of your distributions and send it to some of your donors. Say, hey, I'm just out here at the food pantry doing this, and just wanted you to see what your funding is helping to support and let you know how much we appreciate you. Just simple, 30 seconds, a minute, something like that. Just little touch points. Think creatively. These are just a few. Think about all the different ways that you could do that. Year-end letter from the executive director, Christmas cards. We do Thanksgiving cards, Valentine's cards, love your donors or whatever. Just, brainstorm, think of some good ideas. And for a deeper engagement, set up tours of your organization. Set up volunteering opportunities, customize volunteering experience. That's really good, of course, for businesses if you give opportunity for that. A lot of it will really depend on what they want to do, but you can customize your efforts and around them whenever possible. So wrapping up stewardship, and then I can obviously see we're not going to get to everything I have on this gargantuan note sheet, but never fear, I will send out these notes to you. And so you will get even more than what we talked about after this, or when we do the wrap up. But 3 questions that I want to leave with you to think about and to discuss in your organization now, as soon as possible. Who are your most valuable donors right now? Who are they? If you don't know, find out. Make a list. It could be 2 people, it could be 3 people, it could be 20 people, whatever you think is a manageable list to work with. Make that list and know who they are. Second question, how are you going to take the next step in building relationships with those key donors? We can get all into fundraising theory and talk about relationships in the abstract, but at the end of the day, you have to make a change in what you are doing, not just identify those donors, but know what is the concrete step that I'm going to take next in building that relationship. So jot that stuff down. And then finally, who are some prospects of some donors that you want to expand? So like I said, you want to focus first on the donors who are already given to your organization, but assuming that you have done that and are doing that, broaden out your strategies to maybe include and say, who's in this community? Maybe there are some local businesses here that give back, but we haven't asked for them. Maybe there are some foundations who make grants that we haven't asked from. Explore that. Yeah, so those are 3 questions to think about as you think about donor stewardship and solicitation. Okay, so unfortunately, we do not have time to go through everything. I have some, what I had next was just an overall list of, okay, we just got an alert. Workshop will end in 1 minute. Okay, so in this notes, just so you'll know, in the notes when I send them out, you'll get just a brief overview of some different components of grant proposals and grant applications that can help you chart your way through it. And then also some grant writing tips, just some really simple tips and best practices for how you can be an effective grant writer. So I'll also, like I said, I'm going to send out a link. I'll send out some links to some podcasts that are really helpful, especially the Fulfilled Fundraising podcast, the Rainmaker Fundraising podcast, and the All About Major Gifts podcast from the Veritas Group. Also, we are always here. I'm always here. I'm happy to proofread any grant applications that you have. I'd be happy to do that anytime. If you have a question or you're evaluating what to do, I'm here. I would love to talk to you on the phone or via email. Please always reach out. I'll make sure my contact information is shared. Finally, I just want to acknowledge, unless I get cut off, so if I do, I apologize, but just to say to you, just to celebrate you and the work that you're doing, this is hard work. Serving people, loving people is hard work anyway, especially then once you throw in the uncertainties and the challenges of a global pandemic. So just take a minute to stop and just acknowledge, if you haven't, to yourself or to your friends, hey, this stuff is really hard. And once you've done that, hang in there. Don't give up. It is worthwhile work that we're doing. Every spreadsheet we put together, every budget that we balance, every fundraising proposal that we submit, every food box that we distribute, every produce distribution that we do, every meeting with a donor, every interaction with a volunteer, every interaction with another agency or with the East Texas Food Bank, all of it is working together to make a real difference in the world and in the lives of our neighbors who are depending on us and who are counting on us. And sometimes it seems like there's a whole lot more need than there are resources. You can certainly say amen to that. But if you feel that way, don't give up. Don't lose heart. When we pool our resources and pull together, we can accomplish a lot more than we ever thought possible. So thank you for spending time here together with me this morning. I hope this session was beneficial to you. I hope that you came away with a couple of things that you can use and put into practice immediately. I just wish you the best in all of your fundraising and hope that you have a great time in the rest of today's conference. So thank you. Have a great day.